lots of people in the queue. I'm here next week if you didn't get your question or comment answered, but I would stick around for Awakening Dialogue with evolutionary astrologer Daniel Iverson. Welcome him back to the program. I'm so glad you could be here. Daniel, welcome.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I always enjoy being here, and I'm very appreciative of being on air with you. Yes, thank you.
Me too. I just saw, too, somehow floating around on Facebook that we have a mutual, I don't know if it's friend or acquaintance, Elliot Tanzer.
No, that name's not familiar.
Not familiar? Okay, I thought so. Okay, I thought astrologer. Okay.
I've got like 1,800 friends, so and I can't honestly say that I know all of them personally.
Okay, me too. Fair enough. Okay. So Daniel, first of all, I just want to touch on what evolutionary astrology is, and then I definitely want to get into this Cancer full moon. I have a lot of questions about the feminine or how to use this energy. You know, I think there's sometimes misnomers of the moon, even the sign Cancer, with how people can use these, cycles, moon cycles. But just to give a little overview of evolutionary astrology. And thank you, Tammy, for putting Daniel's website in the chat. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tammy. So, evolutionary astrology is a kind of a psychological perspective, but what it really is, most of the people who come to me for readings are, in their later years in life. I do occasionally get people in their 20s or 30s, but most of my clients are in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. And, it would be foolish for me to take their money to begin to tell them, the what's of their life. They're very familiar with the what's. It's about the whys. Why have the people in your life shown up when they have? Why have you encountered the circumstances and situations you have? Why have they shown up in your life and literally on schedule? And so that's what I work with, to help people come to terms with why these things have happened. And often it's a client who comes with perhaps the death of a child, or loss of their work, or just dealing with certainly all the stress and traumas that we're going through. So it's important to really get people, to get them grounded again, and get them to be able to see the big picture of what's happening in their lives, rather than being pulled down into the mind plays tricks on us. It's very easy to get sucked into depression and feeling like poor me and the world's against me, and to get them to realize that we're big and the world is little, and to be able to begin to approach it that way.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I didn't realize that's so powerful. I feel like the why, when we know things, why something happened, and as you're talking about even the timing of something, that is so powerful to healing and to put it into context. Do you find when you're able to, through the chart, to show them the why, or you're putting it together, can there then be a restart or reset, or maybe even new goals or goals to come back to? Do you see that taking place?
Absolutely. It's a recentering. It's coming back to your center. It works on an intuitive level, just like you do, where it touches the part of people that already know these things. They don't acknowledge it, or they've hidden it, or denied it, or repressed it. And in some cases, it's who they've always wanted to be, but they were afraid to, or not ready, or felt insecure about it, or for whatever reason. Basically, it's awakening people up to themselves. I'm not telling them something that they probably don't already know. I'm just reminding them of what they do know, and they're not remembering.
Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking of some of the callers even that have called in, and people that I've talked to actually the last few months. This sounds like, even with what's going on in the world right now, that this could be a good tool, because a lot of people, like you said, awakening to themselves. I love how you put that. There's a lot of people realizing, I really want to do something else, or I've always wanted to do this, or because I had this other work situation, I couldn't focus on myself or my art or my music or my business that I want to do, my company I want to start, whatever it is. Could something like this help give context or support to someone that is making those kinds of decisions or about to make those kinds of decisions?
Absolutely. But I also believe that, we're not ready to do something till we're ready to do it. And we're not done with something till we're done with it. We move through cycles of time, and we have to give, the space to that time to grow. In my own life, Michelle, I wanted to do astrology back in the 1970s when I first encountered it. But my son was born. It was my first Saturn return. I mean, it just wasn't a viable, career in those days to be an astrologer. So, I didn't pursue it. I knew that was in my soul, in my heart, but I knew that that it just wasn't the time for it, perhaps. And, I went through many years and actually went through two other, other careers that were both very successful careers till, about 15 years ago. I said, if not now, when? And I came back to this, and it was really as a result of a friend who was also an evolutionary astrologer who did a reading for me, and she got maybe 1/3 into the reading, and I just knew that, hook, line, and sinker, I was gone. So, but that's the way life is. We're not ready for it till we're ready for it, and it's unfair to somebody. Right, it's unfair to push somebody, but generally by the time somebody comes for reading, my readings are client driven. I don't sit down and say, well, your sun is this and your moon is that and your rising sign is this. They can get all that from books, even though I don't believe in the cookbook astrology books. Basically, I ask them, what is it that you want to take away from this reading? And that's my entry point into their chart. Because I want them to get something out of it. It's not important for me to just do a monologue and be some kind of astrological wizard and show off all my knowledge. So it's about what they came to me to learn, right? So
absolutely.
That's what's important.
I like that because there's so many ways to interpret the chart and look depending on what you want to know. Because right, it's endless. So that's a great entry point. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I just realized something, and I don't know why. It just dawned on me the other day. I was doing a reading for myself and tuning in, and some things that I thought would happen didn't happen. Anyway, this unfolding, and then I realized I was seeing time and timing. There's timing, but there's also time. There is also, Saturn.
Yeah, you can't see me, but I'm shaking my head as you speak. Yes. Yes.
Right? It just hit me. I'm like, if you put the bread in the oven, no matter how much you chant and pray and how prepared you are, it's, whatever, 350 for 45 minutes. That's it. So, that was kind of like a little, wake-up call with me. Like, okay, some things are the timing, but some things are at just time, You just got to wait for the time. The time is there.
That's it. Yep.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Why you get that little that little nugget has stuck with me so long. I don't know why it took me so much time to get it, but I did. I'm getting it. Let's dive in a bit because we did have some callers about going within, intuition, meditation. Maybe this is also this Cancer full moon. Is making, reflecting, not making, but is reflecting that energy of people perhaps more contemplative or going within or looking at care or nurturing. How do you see this Cancer full moon and, what's best to utilize these energies, I guess?
Well, I see this Cancer full moon. First of all, I kind of like to segue into I don't want to, throw a horseshoe in here, but I was hoping that we would talk about 2021 a little bit. But
I'd love to. I saw on the thing Cancer full. I'd love to talk about. Let's dive into 2021. Yes, let's do it all.
No. Let me answer your question first because I think it's a good segue into it. The Cancer Capricorn full moon right now, I think, is a really interesting overlay on the time that we're passing through, because it's the polarity between self and society. And what we're seeing, in the news, and all of the tensions and traumas that, have really added to the coronavirus and Donald Trump issues. And I don't want to get political, get anybody upset with me, but it's really, we're learning to balance what it is that we need and determining what our essential needs are. This is Uranus and Taurus. For 7 years, our essential needs. But it's really about, determining what it is that I need. And it's also the realization that nobody's coming to save us, Michele. It's about self-care. It's about self-responsibility. That's Capricorn is responsibility, Saturn. And Cancer is nurturing, but it's about nurturing ourselves. It's learning to stop doing the things that, are detrimental to our own well-being, that we just do because our friends do it, or it's a family pattern, or to begin to recognize that we have to come home to ourselves and get recentered, and really determine what it is that we need, and without certainly going head on with consensus reality, which is what, again, that's Capricorn. Capricorn is consensus reality. Right? Yeah, we have to agree to certain things to all live together peacefully. That doesn't seem to be happening very well right now. But again, that's part of this polarity. A full moon is an opposition. It's two ends of the poles pulling, with dramatic tension between them. And it can be a point of illumination, but that point of illumination can also reveal where the differences are, where there's a lack of balance. It comes down to a basic Aries Libra template, if you would, the first house, seventh house template, where it's us and the other. And in this case, it's about our own Cancer and the moon, or basically our self-image. It's our ego, versus Capricorn, which is our place in society, our status. So is our status important to us, or is our own, how we perceive ourselves and how we see ourselves important? And it's trying to balance both of those two opposing directions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. It is forcing a kind of responsibility. So I call inserting oneself in each of us in our own life more. Focusing on the self, letting the self, and that responsibility. I think that's. I'm not sure people really get how powerful they are, individually, and then that zeitgeist happens where whether people join together or not, it doesn't matter. That it's in the air. Something's in the air. And changes start getting made.
We've been raised that way. We've been taught as children that we're little and the world is big. And it's exactly the opposite. The universe is reflective, and when we can change our perspective to it and recognize that what we see is what we're projecting onto it, rather than what we're receiving inward, then the whole dynamic changes. It's becoming proactive in our lives rather than becoming reactive. Most of us are reactive.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And that's true. When you think of the world as so big, and companies or groups or institutions or government, it's big. Everything's big, and we're little. That's true. That's so true. I'm thinking of a commercial years ago. They had this illustration of the person was little, and then the company and the world was everything. Gosh, how do you change that? Start changing that perspective. How do you start integrating that?
It's the 100th monkey principle, where it begins with each one of us. And that's what's happening. COVID and Donald Trump, and I've come back to this, they're homeopathic remedies. And, I guess that's hard for people to get, in the first mouthful, but it's true. They are outing the toxins and the diseases in our culture that have existed for 400 years in our country and perhaps 4,000 years in the world. It's all good. It's just very painful.
Yeah, it is. I remember when my guide said in the meditation, spiritual hierarchy oversoul said he was going to get in. It was like a month before. And I was like, oh my God. And they said, oh no, it's going to bring everything up to the surface because people were taking too long. And what was it? With responsibility. They said the exact same thing. Self-responsibility and letting things slide and being codependent and all that. I was like, wow. And of course that is happening. I was like, really? Okay. Now that the fire is lit under people, on all sides, 21 sides, whatever side someone perceives, the fire is lit, right?
Exactly. Yeah, there's been a lot of fire energy. There's no question. Fire element is very, very strong right now.
Mm-hmm. So this 2021, do you feel that there will be, and what you see, in the aspects that there will be, I guess, more instances of that give the opportunity for this perhaps self-reflection, evaluation, and self-responsibility, like a call to be more proactive?
Yes, but like 2020, where do I begin with this? I don't want to come across as doom and gloom, but I have Virgo risings, so I meet the world as a realist, as pragmatic. Okay, I'd rather
Virgo in my chart, I get it.
I'd rather be Paul Revere than get blindsided and slapped upside the head. This year that's coming does not have all of the what's the word I'm looking for? Big billboard events. It seems it doesn't have the big conjunctions that everybody was very aware of in 2020 and that have set all these long-term cycles in spin. But the question I ask everybody is, the Saturn-Pluto happens every 30 years. Saturn-Jupiter happens every 20 years. Jupiter-Pluto happens every 12 years. Why were they so impactful this year? And the reason is dwarf planet Eris. And I think I've spoken about that here. Eris has it has a 500-year cycle orbit around the Earth, and she spends 120 years, or actually 129 this time, in the single sign of Aries, which means that she crosses over a single point in Aries for 4 years. Okay, she has gone back and forth over the same degree, 23 degrees of Aries now 2 years in a row. And she turns to, like all the outer planets, she goes retrograde and direct once a year. And the pattern has been that she turns direct in January, on January 10th of last year. She's going to do it again January 10th of this year. On January 10th, that coincides with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that occurred on January 20th when the first cases of COVID were discovered. Okay, so we're going to have that same event. We're going to have that same event in January again. And as a matter of fact, we're going to have January is going to be a very, very intense month again. Let me just look at my notes here. Jupiter, the big things that are going on for 2021 are Eris is going to continue to be squared by Pluto, and this aspect of Pluto in Capricorn to Aries and Eris has only occurred once before in recorded history. It's huge. Once before.
Wow.
In recorded history, it was in 691 BCE, and at that time, Buddha and Homer and Pythagoras, there were saints on the planet. The great thought streams of Western civilization, Western culture came onto the planet in those years. That was the Axial Age. Anybody who'd like to read more about it, Rick Tarnas has a whole chapter on the Axial Age. But it was a very momentous time in history, and Eris, is blamed for the Trojan War. I have a couple of women in my, my circle who take a lot of issue with this. Eris was not responsible for the Trojan War. I say it was Helen. I mean, she was married to Menelaus. Why the hell did she run off to Troy with Paris? But it's another whole story. But the point being is that the Trojan War was a significant event, and a lot of her mythology and a lot of her archetype is about what happened in that Trojan War, the death and the chaos, the discord, what was brought to the world. It was the end of the Greek classical age. At the end of the Trojan War, all the heroes of the Greek age were in the underworld. Odysseus, Ulysses went to visit them. But at the end of the Trojan War, a member of the royal family whose name was Aeneas, that many people may know it from mythology, exiled and sailed to Italy, the founder of Rome. Okay, the Roman Empire lasted for 1,000 years. Its vestiges are still part of our culture. This is the impact of Eris, and we're having these aspects again. It happened 3 times last year. Pluto squaring Eris. We have 2 more coming up this year. Okay, if Eris is not done with us. Eris has created the suffering, but Eris only shows up when all the other efforts to resolve long-lasting crises have failed.
Right.
And she steps in, and she creates this tumult, but everything gets straightened out eventually. Okay. The other things that are going on this year we had Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto all in play of all of last year. Well, this year Jupiter and Saturn have moved into Aquarius. That happened last week at the Great Conjunction, the Christmas star that everybody's familiar with, and they are going to square Uranus, which is the ruler of Aquarius. Yeah. So we have these crises aspects to all of these unfolding cycles over the course of 2021. And the first one occurs in January. It's the Jupiter square to Uranus, and then Saturn is going to square Uranus 3 times across the year's actually going to end with it. There'll be 2, in the middle of the year. So this it's going to set the tone for the whole year. The cycles that started, it's a misconception that once these cycles, these conjunctions happen, that it's over. No, it's just the beginning.
I know, exactly. We got the energy. Now, yes.
Now it first has to unfold over time in its own way. And Uranus is going to step right in, and Uranus is interruptions and disruptions. The Aquarian energy, it's revolution. It is individuation. It's our individuality. It's our genius. It's our creativity. It's our inspiration. It's our higher mind. But it also shatters all the Capricorn and Saturnian crystallization that has occurred. Yeah. It shakes things to the roots. I had a friend here in Santa Fe a number of years ago who had a stroke, and he the way he described it, he said, I felt like I was shattered and all my pieces were laying on the ground, but I only picked up the ones that I wanted to hold on to. This is what we're going through. This is the dynamic we're experiencing. Okay, it's a sorting out, and it's a recentering, and a reset as well. So
what's interesting, Daniel, that we have with that Saturn energy, we seem to have this like constriction, restriction, like pull back in, and then at the same time we have the Uranus energy, that Uranian, like pull out, free up, let go of, what's outmoded, outdated, and then the Saturn wanting to bring that back together or keep that previous form or structure. It's like they're happening. What's that square? It's simultaneous.
Yes. Well, Saturn was the traditional ruler of Aquarius before Uranus was discovered. Number one. And then there's all the mythology.
You don't consider. Do you not consider co-rulers? Saturn, Uranus?
I do. But to me, it's still it's a secondary ruler. But yes, I look at both of them. But then there's also the mythology of the patricide and the sins of the father. Uranus was killed by Saturn, and then Zeus killed his father Saturn, And both Zeus and Saturn ate their children. There's an ancestral constellation here of family constellation that's going on. So there's also we are experiencing the sins of the father. Slavery did not begin with the Civil War. Slavery came over on the Mayflower. It was institutionalized in the economy, and the same thing with white supremacy. It all started 400 years ago. So,
well, how even I don't know. All through history, there's been slavery, whether Egyptian, Babylonian, the Romans.
Exactly.
There's always seems to have the serfs are slavery. And they were bartered as chattel, just similar to women bartered as chattel. That seems to be in that DNA of civilization somehow.
It's part of human nature, unfortunately. Slavery didn't end at the Civil War; it just became segregation, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So.
Yeah. So it's interesting how these planets reflect the source energies or energies of all the changes that they're like, to me, I guess, reflectors or avenues of, ways of kind of harnessing or understanding the energy of what wants to happen, that new emerging consciousness, that change. And these are what you're talking about are very intrinsic change. These are not surface changes. These are very deep, profound, intrinsic changes, individually and collectively. Right?
No question. No question. The U.S. is about to have its Pluto return. And from the chart, I use a chart that's a year earlier than everybody else's or most other people. I won't go into it. It's not important. But from my perspective, the U.S. Pluto return is already happening. And any chart you look at will tell you that the U.S.-Neptune opposition is already happening. Well, the Pluto return refers back to 1775 and 1776. And it hasn't happened since. We don't know what this Pluto return looks like because nobody is alive who was alive then. So we don't know what it looks like from beginning to end. But from where I sit, what's going on in our country looks an awful like what it should look like. And the Neptune return is this extreme polarity. It happened in the Civil War. That's the last time that Neptune by transit was opposite the U.S. Neptune, regardless of whatever chart you use. So we're going through truly historic times. And then when we throw in Pluto and Eris going back 2,700 years, it really begins to get thick.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you bring this up because it's this deep healing, but also, as we know, part of healing is some kind of, if you want to call it retribution or amends, whether individual or collective. It seems like we're in this collective amends. Even what happened with, the pandemic of looking at what's essential, this idea of essential workers. I'm like, well, okay, let's look individually. What is essential to your life? Like you said with that friend of yours that had the stroke with Uranus, what's essential?
Right.
Right. Exactly. We're being asked that. So do you feel there seems to be this amends or retribution? Of course, because Pluto loves to bring. That's part of the transformation, at this point in my life, I have come to the understanding that nothing is good or bad on its face. It's how we react to it or respond to it that makes the difference. And we grew up. We were born in a bubble, Michelle. You got to remember that. The last 50, 70 years of history, it started with the Eisenhower years. We were color TV and we were born in a bubble. If we lived in any other time in history, what we're going through would be nothing. And in terms of the United States as well, there's I don't know, after a gallery museum exhibition here that's been going on for a while, which has been tracking the migration of people around the world. And, it's a little known fact in the United States that there are 3.5 million people who are displaced from their homes. They have been out of their homeland on an average of 27 years of being homeless.
out in another country, and mostly because of war in the Middle East. It's 1.7%. No, excuse me, 3.5% of the world's population. Okay.
Wow.
And so. Yeah. Wow. So we look around and we say we have to wear a mask, and you got you know what? It's BS. We
yeah,
still right.
Yeah, I know. We're most of us, our impositions are very small. Can't get your nails
exactly.
done. Right now, whatever your hair, you have to come to your house or whatever. Which that's starting a whole other economy, which is great. Tammy in the chat said, our bubble has burst. Time to clean up and make amends. Live our highest self. Yes, absolutely. One thing I wanted to ask you, Daniel, about Eris is Eris ruled by Mars? Is it a Mars kind of energy? Or how would you describe?
I think she's more Plutonian, but yes, she's more. We're feeling the Mars energy from her now because she's in Mars sign. She's in Aries, and she spends her longest. Okay. Well, she spends her longest portion of her 500 years in Aries. Some of the signs she's in and out in 20 or 30 years. 129 years in a single sign. Eris entered Aries in 1927. About 1929, we had the stock market crash, the Great Depression, the rise of fascism, World War II, right? And there is also a symbiosis with Uranus. Uranus's 84-year cycle fits twice into that 129-year transit. So Uranus was actually conjunct Eris back in 1927. They perfected in 29. All right, and Uranus and Eris came back together. Guess what year? 2015. Okay.
Oh, interesting. Ah.
All right.
Now, what about this Chiron in Aries? There must have been a conjunction. Chiron in Aries, Eris in Aries. Is there any interplay with that in looking at healing, or is that just my simplistic knowledge?
Nothing's coincidental. Nothing's coincidental, but Chiron's orbit is only 51 years, so it's one 1/10 of the time. But there's a synchronicity to it because we're needing the mentoring, we're needing the healing, we're needing to but it's Aries itself, it's self healing. It's about healing what we need from inside, not from outside.
Yeah, that's going to make all the difference. It's interesting, even having to be the quote unquote quarantine, being a little bit of a monk or nun or however you want to put it. It's causing that people having to reflect more, perpetuating more of that self healing. Now to be able to do that more consciously and integrate that into everyday living, right? That would be the key. I think it'd be very helpful.
Well, the quarantine is really an interesting event in itself. I think everybody else has had the same experience as me. When we get out, we get into town, or we're walking. We get out and walk, or go for hikes. I see people who are walking down the street and their face is buried in their phone. They're already quarantined. We were quarantined before this happened. We have been digitally quarantined. We have been so self-focused and drawn inward that it was just a natural thing to happen. That you're home. You're just going to stay home too. And again, I don't know how to basically balance all that out, but it's an observation which is undeniable.
Yeah. We've got Tammy in the chat. Thank you for this time together. The sharing was a new year full of courage to face whatever. Thank you. Good information. Thanks. Sounds like a little, just looking in the chat. Recentering time for sure. Yeah, and I think when we get these heads ups, which I'd like to, I did Paul Revere, like giving, just the information. it helps people understand what's going on and give it some kind of context and meaning for themselves, not just out there, but individually. What can the individual changes be? What individual changes that need to be made? Which to me, with that Eris and Aries, Chiron and Aries, it is, again, as you were saying, it brings it back to the individual.
The remedies are embedded in all the transits as well. Most people have not paid a whole lot of attention to Astraea Pallas Athena. She was the most revered goddess of the Greek pantheon. Athens was named for her. She's the goddess of wisdom, and she corresponds to our she's actually what's known as an octave transformer. You know that there are planetary octaves like Mars and Pluto and Mercury and Uranus. Well, she is the octave transformer of Mercury and Uranus. She is able to synthesize, to step down the Uranian impulses and pull them down into Mercury and make them practical applications. And this is part of the Sagittarius Gemini lunar nodes that you referred to as well. That it's about finding practical solutions, and we're all getting hits. We're getting mental, intuitive, inspirational hits, and the question is, are we listening to them? Okay, and all this Capricorn energy. You know, Pluto is still in Capricorn. Pluto is going to be in Capricorn until 2024. Even as Jupiter, you know, even as Saturn spends another 7 years in Aquarius. And Capricorn is about getting grounded. You know, take your shoes off. Go walk in your backyard on the grass. Go for a hike. You know, get close to nature, because nature will literally it will suck all of that negative stuff out of us if you spend some time with it.
Boy, does it ever.
Right.
Yeah, God. So, I'm in the mountains right now. I'm looking at a big tree, big fir tree. So right, Daniel. Yeah. Now you have to come back. We have to talk about this practical solutions, the Gemini North Node, South Node, Pallas Athena. I love that. So we're out of time now. But yeah, you've given us so many nuggets. This has been so amazing to have you on the program today. Thank you so much for being here, Daniel.
No, thank you for having me.
Until next time. Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Some great nuggets there of insight and information to help you navigate this time. This is what this is really about, is navigating. And I love what he was saying about the self-responsibility. Anyway, that was our guest was Daniel Fiverson. You can find out more information by going to 4evolutionaryastrology.com. That's the number 4evolutionaryastrology.com for more information, your reading. Thank you, Tammy, for putting it in the chat. Yes, please come back for part 2. Yes, Daniel. I'll ask him, because he's starting to get in some good stuff, practical solutions. That is the Gemini. And what is the Gemini is similar to Aries, each of us. Gemini is the community. It's the group. Getting those practical solutions individually. All right, everyone, Happy New Year. Everyone in the chat, everyone that called in, Happy New Year. Those of you that are listening later in the archives, Happy New Year. I wish you all so much soul connection, soul inspiration, soul guidance, a peace and nurturing calm. And I wish for you the deep understanding to know that the answers are within you, to trust your current, your flow, your individual awareness, and how you want to express this. Remember, you are a spirit. You are a spiritual being. Now the question is, where and how you want to express and experience this. Okay. All right, everyone, if you want to connect with me further, come connect with me on my YouTube channel, Instagram, Patreon, soulplayground.life. I will see you in the new year, and have a beautiful time. And as always, continue to shine your light, share your insights, and, of course, keep awake.
Awakenings broadcast every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Pacific Time. Archive shows available on iTunes. For continued awakened conversations and insights, join the Awakenings group on Facebook. And check out Michelle's blog at soulplayground.com and keep awake.